Freshen up your self-image, a real skills workshop, because we think that freshening up our self-image actually benefits from applying some skill, some practice, some of the things that we're going to be touching on and exploring tonight. I'm Rick from Thriving Now. I'm here with Kathy Bartoli from Thriving Now and the Intimacy Dojo. Hi,
It's great
Kathy.
to be here. I love this topic because I think that it's really easy to get stuck in the ruts and our expectations of ourselves, our vision of ourselves, and to not kind of clean it up. We get dust on it from random experiences we have with ourselves, experiences of watching others, and then we just kind of carry them around. This something that doesn't fit us, and we're kind of living a life that isn't really authentic in ours. So I love the idea of re-exploring this and dusting it off.
And particularly for those of us that are empathetic, that actually feel energy from others, I consider it a wonderful blessing, and it also makes me susceptible. So, for example, it's easy for me. Um, I mentioned about in the newsletters that went out about dancing,
Mhm.
and what I didn't say is that I don't think I said was when I was dancing in the living room, listening to some Latin music, kind of remembering my Zumba days, and just like, you know, carrying around some asparagus. And I was feeling pretty good. And my partner comes in from the garage, grabs something in the kitchen, and heads back out the door. Not a smile, a look. And I confirmed with her later, she was kind of like intense, but the look wasn't for me. It was because she was vacuuming out a whole bunch of stuff from the back of the car while trying to keep a toddler from toddling down the extremely steep driveway into the road. Yet, like my self-image receptors, like who am I coming from the outside world, were were reached because I care about her. We have a relationship. There's lots of channels of energy, which we can have with lots of different people in our world. People that we serve on a board with, uh, people that we work with, people that are neighbors, people that are all kinds of different things. So those of us that have sensors that pick up energy from others, we can end up feeling things about ourselves, which are a bit like, as you said, dust, but it can also feel like someone wrote to me that she feels like she's got sand and dirt and poop and a lot of other things as a really, truly sensitive person that have kind of made their way to impact her self image.
Yeah.
It's true. If I'm covered with poo and I look in the mirror, my image of myself is very different than if I go within and I know myself as, oh, yeah, I'm Rick and it's time for a shower. So freshening up our self-image, um, it can we can be impacted in those ways from the external. It can also be impacted, of course, from internal stuff too, right, Kathy?
Yes. And I think one of the things that happens is sometimes we don't even realize it's happening. It's that fish and water thing where we're like, we have an experience that causes pain, or maybe someone outside does something that says something to us, but we don't even understand that we're steering away from what this thing is. Like we subconsciously just avoid it. And so I'd love to, if you're willing to go on a short, gentle meditation with me, just so that to help you notice some of the things that you might not be noticing about yourself, if that feels all right. How is your self identity maybe being dented or impinged upon by beliefs that you're not even aware of? And what are you avoiding? So if that feels okay with you, I'll be very gentle and you can take care of yourself however you like. But I invite you to take a gentle, deep breath in and let yourself just kind of sink down in your body a little bit. Imagine you can kind of feel your butt on the chair. Notice your body, like your being in your body that far, if that helps. And then take another deep breath. And just let yourself feel your feet on the floor. Wiggle your toes and notice the texture there, the temperature of the air between your toes. And knowing that you're safe here and now, if it's safe for you to do so, just like if you're not driving or something, just gently close your eyes and let yourself just be friendly with your body for a minute. Just kind of like, hey, I'm here with you. We've got this together. We're going to do this together. And just imagine the day behind you, the day you just had. And just let yourself kind of feel yourself in your body going through your day and invite yourself to notice any place that you might have avoided an experience or told yourself you weren't allowed to have something. Some places that you were steering away from, something you would really like to have because you either don't think it's possible for you or you think there might be dangerous or painful. And just be with that for a minute. Just let yourself be in your day. And if it feels right, if you're drawn to, you can expand it. It doesn't have to be just today. It can be this week or this month. And just breathe deeply and invite your subconscious to let thoughts and memories float to the surface. There's no right or wrong. You're just curious. Is there some way that you're holding yourself back from having the experience that you'd like to? Is there some way that your self-image has gotten impacted so that you're not letting yourself see yourself, as Rick said, as a dancer? Or what is it you're not letting yourself see yourself as? Take another nice deep breath. Let yourself sink just a little bit deeper into your body, noticing that you're safe here and now, that you're with people that are caring and generous and helpful and curious about the same thing. And just let your subconscious know that it can bring up the idea when it feels safe. If it doesn't feel safe doing it right now, it's welcome to bring them up in dreams or daydreams, and just let yourself notice a little more where you might be limiting yourself, a little more where you might be holding yourself back. And even if you think it's not possible to have what you want, being aware of it consciously and re-examining it might let you find other ways to experience that. For instance, if Rick decided he wanted to be a prima ballerina, it might be really hard. He should have started training when he was 4. But he can be a dancer in other ways. He can express himself in other ways. So let yourself just be curious about these ideas. What if you could do it a different way than you thought? What if you could experience more empowerment and more vitality in your self-image than you thought you could have? And then just thank your subconscious, your body. Just notice that you've let yourself relax just a little bit deeper. And then if you'd like to gradually bring your awareness back to here and now, if you want to wiggle your toes and sit up a little straighter, take a breath and look around. And if you have things that came to you, one really great way to anchor them is to type. If you want to write them down, you can type them in the chat if you want to share, because we love to celebrate that. We won't read your name, we just share the concept of it. Or if you write it down, I always have lots of sticky notes around so I can write things down. Because something that our subconscious has been practicing withholding from us, it tends to just wipe it away. It distracts us and we're like, huh, what was that thought? It was really good, but it's gone. So I encourage you, if you did have something come up, to write it down. If you haven't had something come up, you may want to keep a pen and paper by your bed tonight, just because a lot of times when we're drifting in and out of sleep, some of these things will come forward and ping us.
Mm, thank you.
I think it's important to notice how much I sometimes am not aware of how much I hold myself back. And I know our brains are really careful about protecting ourselves. So I got really used to not being around humans and during COVID, and I didn't realize how much things have opened up a lot more in California now. Their numbers are super low. And I was like not reaching out to people. I was not doing some of the things that are really good for me, that feel really revitalizing, just because I've gotten used to it's, you know, my subconscious is programmed to people dangerous. So it's, you know, that's something I'd like to just shift a little bit, because I do enjoy people. I like getting outside and seeing people and watching them. So if someone shared they had a lot of non-specific fear come up, and that's no problem. I think that's, I love that you shared that thought, and maybe notice how that fear feels in your body, and that part of your system may be afraid of seeing yourself with more possibility. That may not feel safe to your system, and that may be something that's valid here and now, but a lot of the fears we learn and the limitations we learn are from when we were really young. And even if we got past them, traumas like COVID was traumatic, and it can reactivate old traumas that we had when we were little that we kind of got past. We learned that we didn't have to hold on to them anymore. If they weren't completely cleaned out, sometimes a new trauma can kind of, oh, I'm scared to have more possibility. I'm scared to see my identity freshened up. So
Mhm.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Was that I really want to be able to maintain a more consistent energy and productivity stream throughout the day and go be more physically active.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, as a, you know, we can want something. Part of self-image to me is, where does that land in your core? I talked about identity energy and many different energy models of the human existence talk about core energy, the energy that is deeper in us, the visceral organ. You know, even our meridians are labeled to major organ systems and the governing energy of us. And so, for example, consistent energy, like when I try that on, and this is, you can, if you're looking for more if consistent energy is something that you say, oh, I want more consistent energy, um, you can try on, like, at your core, are you like that consistent light? Like, at your core, is that the way your energy orientation is? Now, some people, they're like, I've worked with, and they're like, yes, I am like the sun. And while the sun fluctuates a bit, um, there's a constancy to that. And so when you touch that aspect of yourself, you can be like, I'm consistent. Well, for me, I wanted to be consistent. And as I really tuned into my core energy, I'm like a spontaneous weather system in the Appalachian Mountains. It's going to
You never
be
know what you're
going to
getting.
be 22 in the morning and 74 in the afternoon, and sometimes the reverse of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, inside of me, I can tune to the intelligence of my own weather. And so if my self-image tries to go in the direction of consistent energy, I am actually moving away from my core. For some people, they're moving toward their core. And so I wanted to use that as an example, so that, um, if it hits your brain, oh, I want more consistent energy. Like, for me, I have consistent energy as long as I'm tuning to the rhythmic cycles of me that are a bit more spontaneous. Mornings have a particular energy, afternoons, evenings, but it's not like predictable. You couldn't map me out in the same way. I can't map me out, but I can be responsive. And that's where, this is part of the skill here. Um, Again, like, also on being more physically active, like tuning to our And again, like it's Kathy brought us into meditation, whether you call it meditation or just like going into your skinosphere and feeling for something that's deeper than just thought. You can sometimes, I had to learn this by following my breath down into my chest and in the heart region and belly. I don't belly breathe particularly well. It's not a skill that I've been able to like natural on, but if I go within, like the physicality, where's the impulse, the craving to be physical, the aliveness, the you as a living, pulsing, vibrant, vital being. Um, Again, one of the reasons I needed this workshop and wanted this workshop is that um, self-image to me is a inner awareness, um, and it's assaulted pretty constantly by external influences. What I do and what I don't do is an external thing. That's different from who I am and what how I choose to know myself and see myself, feel myself. So, any others that you wanted to bring?
Yeah, I think someone else shared a feeling of shame and unworthiness. So that could be pinned like a lot of non-specific fears, shame, unworthiness. There may be some part of you feels protective, um, and does is afraid of you shifting this. And that's a reversal that in when we're doing energy work, it's called reversal. Like part of us is resistant to change. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that part is there for you to it wants to support you. It cares about you and is trying to help you. So fighting, I tend to get beat on my like I still after all these years will still first go to like I'm gonna force it, which never works. That part is really strong, but I'm like, okay, thank you. I get that you're really afraid. I get that you're really ashamed. Maybe you feel unworthy of this. And then I try to identify where that part came in or what it's protecting me from. And then I have something specific I can do tapping on. Because if I'm just fighting it, there's way I think if we have small traumas, a lot of people talk about accountability and for just power through. When we have small traumas or small things that are resistant, we can sometimes override them. Or some people have trained their willpower to the point where they run over themselves all the time. But I don't like that feeling. I feel divided and resistant and having to put a lot of work in all the time. So what I'd rather do is go, "Oh, wow, you're protecting me. Thank you. What do you think is really scary? Where did you learn this? What are you afraid of?" And start picking that up, working with that part until maybe there's something I really do need to be afraid of, or more likely it's some old belief that I can transform with tapping. And then all of a sudden that part is like, yeah, let's do it. So I have twice as much energy to move forward. So I really appreciate. I imagine that sharing about fears and shames and unworthiness is like I imagine that's really vulnerable, and I really appreciate people sharing that because that can get in the way. It's a big deal. And I was also touched. Someone shared they've been through a lot. When we have a lot of trauma, someone had been through a abusive relationship and then COVID combined, and there's a lot of hiding energy involved then. That's normal and good. And I think I like to say, like, we're going to talk about baby steps a little more later, but like, if I was a scared rabbit or I had a scared rabbit, I'm not going to throw it out in the middle of a large field with lots of things happening. I'm going to go, okay, Jen, like our survival brain is really scared. It's like, you have been through a lot. The system has been through a lot of trauma. COVID was very traumatic. I don't have to go run a marathon tomorrow. What if I just walked out in my front yard and enjoyed it? And it kind of segues, like someone said, they're afraid to explore a new place they live, which is a really beautiful place, as a result of sheltering in place for so long, especially by themselves. And I don't like to do things that I'm scared of by myself. I really don't. And sometimes it's hard to find new people to do things, if especially you move to a new area, you might not have as many people. So the combination of like baby steps, like I don't have to go to all the tourist destinations. Maybe I can take a walk around the block and help my brain feel a little safer. Maybe I can look on Meetup and see if they have some small outing clubs that I could join. Like baby steps and really understanding that our systems are overwhelmed. I think our society sucks at that. We're supposed to just go back out there and get her done. And I don't think our systems work well that way. We're constantly fighting our fear, and we can actually re traumatize ourselves and anchor that it's scary and hard and bad versus
So
very gentle ways to do it.
when you said fight your fears, for example, there are people who, in their identity, their self-image is, I fight my fears, I conquer my fears. And if that is really true, then excellent. And you see them and they talk about it and they put that out there. Um, I that doesn't work for me. Like that is so not me. You know,
Yeah.
it's definitely not. So for me, this is where self-image can help. So if I'm been really contracted and I have been, right? Like protection and COVID and everything else. Like there were restrictions put on me and
Any
there were
baby.
restrictions and choices that my family made also. So if I'm looking at, oh, okay, freshening up my self-image, and I invite you, if you'd like to be out there in the world, like what is true for you? Like, oh, I actually like to explore. Now that's true for me within my territory. Okay. So, like, if I'm in a new place, what I like to do is extend out my territory. Like, I start close to home and I start noticing and feeling for the energetics of it. And can you tell, like, okay, now I'm freshening up my self image. It's like, oh, yeah, when I started doing my morning miles, which was my first one? Oh, the one closest to home, right? And then I would like go a little further and go a little further because I'm exploring. But part of it is mapping out the energy space. Like I'm an energetic person. I can feel the energy between like a block of houses that are just like really off for my energy and places that would be really uplifting and nourishing. So if it that kind of explorer, maybe you want to be inspired. So, oh, you know, I love to have my artistry inspired. And so I'm going to go with just the idea that I'm going to freshen up my inspiration and that's the thing. So like you find things that are connected, core to you, things that matter, that feel congruent with how you see yourself. Like somebody looking at you might say, "Oh, you need to get out more." Well, you just need to go back to dance. Well, you just need to like, ah, that's when we start rebelling. And I'd love it if you'd lead us in a tapping on like rebelling the the willpower have to shoulds kind
Mhm.
of thing here.
Yeah.
Um,
Invite you to take a nice deep breath. Karate chop, all these shoulds.
all these shoulds and shouldn'ts.
I should do this now.
I should do this now.
I shouldn't do that
I
later.
shouldn't do that later.
I ought to be doing that.
I ought to be doing more.
That
That.
would,
Yeah.
yeah, that would fix everything.
I'm sorry. I
That's,
just want to
I don't think
cry.
it actually will, but that's they tell me it would fix everything,
They tell me it'll just fix everything,
and I don't want to.
and I don't want to.
You can't make me.
You can't make me.
I refuse.
I refuse.
Side of the eye, you can't make me.
You can't make me.
Under the eye, no, 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 no.
No, 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 no.
Under the nose, I don't want to
I can't
listen.
make me.
Under the nose, I can't make me either.
I can't make me either.
Chin, I do better when I listen to my guidance.
I do better when I listen to my guidance, my inner
Coll-
guidance.
Collarbone. The shoulds just make me back away.
The shoulds make me back away.
Under the arm. What do I get to do here?
What do I get to be here?
Top of the head. I'm really curious about that.
I'm really curious about that.
Eyebrow. Are there baby steps I can take that would help me?
Are there baby steps I can take that would help me?
Side of the eye. Maybe it's just pulling up a map to explore online.
Maybe it's just filling up a map and exploring with my energy online.
Under the eye. What if I know what it looks like?
What if I know what it looks like?
Under the nose. That might help me calm my survival brain.
That does help me calm my survival brain.
Chin. What if I Googled reviews online?
What if I Googled reviews online? Saw the pictures.
Collarbone. What if I just walked around my block?
What if I just walked around my block?
Under the arm. I'm really curious what's aligned for me.
I'm really curious what's aligned for me and who I know myself to be.
Yeah. Top of the head. What if I let these oughts and shoulds just float away?
Yeah, I'm going to let the oughts and shoulds float away.
Just take a breath and notice how your body feels about that. And Rick has a great refusal tapping on Thriving Now. I have listened to it a zillion times. It's so good. It just like, no, 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 no. And I listen to that and tap along when I get a lot of oughts and shoulds from family members. And
No, You Can't Make Me is the name of
yes,
it.
yes, it's very good. So I encourage you if you're feeling stuck on that. That's a great one to have on your speed dial. And just notice our brains will ought on us too, or should on us. And sometimes we can just tap on that, like, no, I can't make me, like inviting myself to just let that go.
One wrote, if I feel like someone around me is more intelligent than I am, and my clues for this are sort of super ungrounded, superficial, that I won't have something to offer them in the way I'm not at their level, quote, their level, I shut down. I have no idea why when I decided that always being able to elevate conversation forward or offer someone perspective, new information, and being a thought leader became so important and core to my identity. Um, so um, this is this is where we can get something into our core identity that um, part of freshening it is, I believe, to say, and my way of doing that or my way of being with that is, and find something that, like, when I hear like checking out or dissociating, or like shutting down or feeling less intelligent than, um, so thought leader for some people, I used to have my domain was leaders.net. Do you know what? Leader is not, I had it as my identity and it didn't fit. It was a shoe that was just really awkward. Um, so for me, facilitator, I like to make things easy. Now, some people might call me a leader, but I don't identify as a leader. I'm I'm an engager. I'm a co-creator. I'm somebody who enjoys engaging around things that matter. I'll put some assertive energy into it, but like thought leader, um, really feel into, oh, now what that really means to me is energetically I dot dot dot. And I don't believe anyone else can answer that for us. I offer you some of my reframe for it. This is the reframe of something that we want, but maybe we haven't landed on the energetics that, like, yes. In a situation like this, where someone, I'm getting the sense that they, there's, there's this thing going on, or that they have a particular kind of intelligence that is different than mine. Oh, cool. So like neurodiversity, I have friends who have intelligences that I don't have. And if I try to meet them in that way, so like, oh, I actually can celebrate a diversity of intelligence. Now I relax. If I'm trying to match them, like memorization and fluency in languages and things, when I meet people that just have that, it's like, no, 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 no. I speak 12 languages. Um,
Yeah.
I don't. I'm on day 680 of Duolingo, and I'm still in like really. I sometimes can read a tweet that's in Spanish, but like in my identity, I'm not trying to hold fluency, like multilingual. What I am is like, I appreciate that each language has its own poetry and energetics to it. And there is something about when I hear people speaking a language that really sings, the vibration of it sings to me, I want to understand it a bit more deeply and a bit more deeply. Can you see how if I hold like I am multilingual, I tried that for about a week, I felt really off. And as I tapped on it, like, what actually am I here? uh, uh, yeah, I'm an appreciator of vibration, including the vibration of language. Does that?
Yeah. I love that you shared that, and I think that one of the ways I can get caught up in that, I hang out with a lot of engineering types, philosophical, that people that just want to like one up them, and there's a status race to see, oh, I know that character, I know this, I know that. Oh, you said the name wrong, and I can get caught up in that. It's not fun for me. It's a lot of adrenaline, and I don't really relax into it until I remember if I invite myself to be of service to the to the group and myself,
Um,
and then I don't know how they'll receive what I share. I don't have any control over that. But I also know people have come back to me years later and said, that thing you said, which to me, I was like worried that people thought it was stupid or whatever. They were really touched by that. So I think we can share what's in our heart, what we think is useful, and then kind of let the universe and that other person take what they can. So when I stop being a status race and start being just like, do I feel drawn in my heart to share this, whether it's useful to them or not, then I share it. And just being of service to me was one of the ways I got out of that loop.
and and when you were talking there, I'm having known you now for, since 2007, like I feel the congruence. Like, oh, Kathy will speak and share with the vulnerable courage to not know how it's going to be taken. Um, but like I'm aware, having been on calls and workshops, that if you feel that rising truth in you, you will write it, you will speak it. And I know, having been the recipient of that kind of, that it's not only congruent in your core, but it also, I believe, when we're acting from that congruence, other people can feel more free, like
Mm-hmm.
to be who they are. Um, that's where self-image is not competitive. If there's a competition going on, that's not actually what I mean by our self-image. Our self-image is a self-knowing and a self-knowledge where you get to feel for how true something feels to you. Um, where would you like to go?
I think I'd love to talk a little bit about how outside, like go a little bit deeper about how the outside impacts us sometimes,
Yeah.
the external. And for me, there's different levels of pull. So there's a societal pull of like, oh, old people, you're getting old. This is just what happens. Like it seems like a universal like, oh, I'm a little achy today. Oh, that's what happens when you get old. I'm like, personally, as a
You've been
5-year-old, I
saying that to
remember.
me since I was 27.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I was 5. I remember aching and like wondering what that was. So like bodies ache sometimes, and then we just have a societal gravitational pull. Like that's age. There's no escape. Versus, oh, well, I know I ate a bunch of sugar yesterday and I know that makes my joints sore the next day. Like, do I, is it worth it to eat the sugar? I'm going to ache the next day. So, like, as opposed to, like, I have more control when I'm not falling into the societal traps of universal, like, this is what happens when you get old. And then we have family pulls, our family stories that can really make it hard to see our own identity. They kind of obscure. It's like wearing someone else's glasses. They're probably not going to be in focus, and they may be pointed at something that in a direction we don't want to go. And I think that's something we chip away gradually, like society and family and friends or whatever. We're gradually learning who we are. And I think going through life and just being on this call is another chance to see yourself in a little bit different way. See some of the blocks and the things that are pulling at you in a little bit different way. And each time we get a little closer to our core self, our awareness of ourself. And I think each time we get closer, it makes it easier to see where we're out of alignment. We have the sense of being in alignment for a little bit. We're around other people that are we see that other people that are trying to get in alignment and learning about that. And it just makes it so it's easier and easier to drop into, like, is this a me expression or is this someone else? Is this like outside of us?
Even though it's sometimes confusing.
Even though it's sometimes really confusing.
Is this me or is it someone projecting on me?
Is it me or is it someone projecting on me?
I want to feel my own identity energy.
I want to feel my own identity energy.
Top of the head. It's so noisy out there.
It's so noisy out there.
Eyebrow. People are so quick to tell you how you have to be.
People are so quick to tell you how you have to be.
Side of the eye. And a part of me is malleable
A part of me is malleable.
under the eye. A part of me is sometimes a wee bit too malleable.
Sometimes a part of me is a little bit way too malleable.
Uh, uh, um, yeah. And that means it's time to freshen up my own self identity.
And that means it's time to freshen up my own sense of self identity.
Who, how do I see my true self?
How do I see my true self?
What doesn't really fit?
What does it really fit?
The things that fit can be so much in the way.
Things that fit can be so much in the way.
They can be so much in the way.
They can be so much in the way.
I appreciate that I'm doing some freshening right now.
I appreciate that I'm doing some freshening right now.
Anything external that you all would like to share that seems
Yeah.
to affect your sense of identity? I feels like if we do, we will be taking a break in about 10 minutes. So if we have some things that are alive for people, we can do some tapping. If you want to raise your hand, you can also do that under reactions
And
or use the chat.
while we're seeing if anyone wants to share, I think that one of the things I've discovered, and I used to think that I would find my identity and then I would be it, I'd be done. And the really cool thing is we keep growing and evolving. We find deeper parts of ourselves, more true parts of ourselves. So I like to experience life as kind of an out loud meditation, experience a meditation of, like, oh, this doesn't feel really great. Okay, so maybe I don't want to go in this direction. Or is there something about the going this direction that isn't so good for me? Oh, this direction feels really quite good. Maybe I want to continue, but, like, being mindful and present as much as I can, letting myself slow down and notice what I'm experiencing. I think most of my life I lived in my head. I didn't have an experience of experiencing life. And I love that I've been able to slow down a lot more and just, like, I'm noticing being here with all of you. I feel warm and inspired, and I feel very loving towards each of you. I really touched the what people are sharing. So, like, oh, so this is a good for Kathy kind of thing to do. So versus, like, oh, I was really rushed this morning trying to deal with stuff at work. Maybe I need to set some boundaries about how often I answer the phone, or like, there's just different ways we can kind of identify what's a good for each individual experience, and what it's like GPS too. It's like I get in my car, it says go east. I'm like, if I knew which way east was, I'd be all set, but I don't know, so I'm just gonna start driving. And I don't have to go fast or far, but I can start, coasting, driving a little bit, and then the car will say, okay, nope, it's back the other way, and I can turn around and go there. So sometimes experiences aren't ideal, but we can use them as a guidepost, as a direction finder.
And this comment I think really fits when external influences are impacting our image. Um, the online world, emails, YouTube, social media, etc., really throws me off. Now, that's the clue from an emotional freedom coaching standpoint. It's like, oh, it really throws me off. Now, um, I compare myself to all the other entrepreneurs and feel like I'm failing all the time. Um, so let's use this skill of freshening self-image to look at that feeling because it's a real feeling. I've had it. I've had it this week, right? You'll get something and you'll be like, "Wow, that is so awesome," and I'm not doing that, right? And if we're externally referencing what we're looking at is comparing what's coming at us, not actually knowing and kind of piercing the veil. For example, there are people that their orientation energetically is to have fans and followers. Can we agree on that? That there are people that like they flourish with fans and followers. There are people who have fans and followers that do not flourish having fans and followers. Okay. But for people that flourish energetically in the kind of influencer and kind of dynamic, what I would say is that their self image would have things like, oh, I put myself out there and I get this wonderful mass of energy coming at me from so many people, right? Like million followers, like right? Now, if I compare myself to that person, I will say that my core energy feels like like I could say I'm a failure. It feels that intense. Saying that feeling like a failure is a very intense feeling, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's hit a hammer on the back of your hand kind of feeling for me. But let's remember that our core has an intelligence. Yeah, I'm a failure at being something that I'm not. I'm not that person. I'm not actually oriented the way that they are. A million fans is a disaster for my well-being because it's not personal enough. I don't mind influencing and being of service to a million people. I have, but I don't like it's a core group of people. We have a relatively small audience compared to, you know, any kind of rock star or something, including like summits and other things. But to me, this feels intimate. And I know that hundreds of people will watch the video, but it feels intimate because we're here. We fit on a screen or two. And so like this is where freshening our self-image can be like, okay, there's something in that that really, what if there's something in that that really is not right for me? And it's a body no. And that body no of kind of comparing and trying to be drawn is so wrong for me that I feel like, oh, I'm a failure. I'm just going to shut down. because that's my core intelligence is no, don't go in. There be dragons there. That is not right for you. It probably isn't some of the things that do clearly matter. Like, oh, I'd like to be of service. If that feels true to you, like, oh, they're being of service. I want to be of service. You're not saying no to that. It'll feel like, oh, yeah, I'm totally in line with that. Oh, look how flashy they are. You know, like as soon as I feel that, I know I'm going in the wrong direction if I try to be too polished, flashy, um, kind of the media production kind of thing. If I try to compare myself, I feel like a failure. Like I start to almost cry. I'm sharing with you intimately like what happens in my energy field when these things happen and how I've learned to parse it. Because if you take something that inspires you, that activates you in some way, then you can parse out the parts of it that are true because you'll feel them like, oh yeah, yeah, that's me. Uh-huh. I want to put more energy there. That's where you get that identity energy. When you're sideways to it, you shut down because that inner core intelligence will say, no way, I am not, I'm not, that would not be good for me. This,
I love what you shared. And one other thing that I notice I do is I'll pick and choose from all the different influencers. That person has an amazing YouTube channel. That person is on stage every day. That person is hanging out with famous people. That person touched 1,000 people's lives. It's like I'm picking and choosing the best, and I do that on Facebook too. Oh, that friend finished her book. That friend is. I have a friend that's on a TV show right now, and she's amazing. I'm so happy for her. She's getting a lot of recognition, and part of me is like, why am I not doing that? We can't. None of those people do all of those things. I mean, sometimes when people get very wealthy and very famous, they can hire people to do a lot of that to help them. But I'm not going to get anywhere if I'm trying to do all those things. What I can do is come back to this moment. What is right for me? How do I want to express? How do I want to serve people? Oh, maybe it's writing a quick letter to Rick saying I had this great idea for a call for next month. Maybe it's writing a newsletter. Maybe it's doing a YouTube video. Maybe it's doing self care. So I think when it's really easy to go, oh my God, look at all these amazing, fabulous people who are probably specializing to a certain extent.
comparison is the thief of joy, and yet we have comparison engines in us. We do that in order to to survive and to thrive. So it's where it lands in a place that is not skillful.
Mm,
And I appreciate that for those of us who are emotionally sensitive people, that we can get clues like, oh, that's actually, someone mentioned making me feel all wobbly.
yes.
Well, if I'm not standing in my core energy, I'm wobbly. Mhm. It starts making me feel like a failure. Um, Great clue. Like, ah, amazing. What a perfect clue. There's something in here which is really not what your identity is. It's not your come from. When people talk about what your come from, sometimes it's a why, it's an analytical why. Your come from energetically, this core identity thing is like, there's a part of my core identity that loves being generous. There's an energetic with people that giving and receiving generously without pressure, without having to in order to look like a good person. Like there's a good boy that kind of, like, oh, I have to do this in order to be a good person. No, if I try to be generous, to be perceived as a good person, I stop. I feel like a failure. I feel like it's never going to be enough. If I come from the place of, oh, I want to cultivate more of this in the world, and I just so sweet. It's just such a, yeah. Now I can come from an energetic place. And as you freshen up your self image, it's like, oh, there's this little strand of this in me. So for example, if I learn a lot from a particular list of people out on Twitter, um, and sometimes it turns really like, you know, I don't know. If if I stay attuned to them, it draws me into competitive. I am not at my core identity. I am not a competitive person. I want people to thrive in their way. If you want to play a particular game that's competitive, that brings out the best in you, great. It's not my game. And so, like, if I start getting pulled off, that's on me. My skill is to come back to what matters, co-creative, co-creation, artistry. I appreciate people being assertive on behalf of ideas that matter to them. And I really like kindness. I even call this kind house. My partner and I agree that kind house is a good thing. We're not always kind, but that's an aspiration that matters. And there's an energy in me. There's energy in me for, and this is as we take the break, I invite you, it, self-image, think about like there's energy in me for what? Something that you feel matters to you. There is energy for in me for, and we're gonna take a break. Take care of yourself. Tend to this. Go in a different direction too. We're all about emotional freedom here. Um, yeah, and we'll be back at half past. That's when we'll start. All right, I'm going to pause the recording. And if you're listening to the replay, thanks for being with us. And we invite you to take a pause here too. Welcome back.
I think sometimes, oh, did you, you look like you were going
No,
to say
go
something.
ahead.
I think sometimes we can have beliefs stuck to different experiences or self appearance that can cause us to be stuck as well. So, someone shared that they'd lost a tooth in a very visible spot, and they thought they would be able to get back online and be confident as they used to be, but it's not happening. Even though they tapped on it, meditated, it's still not happening. And I think that at that point, maybe you already have, but like looking at the beliefs you have about that. So I grew up in a very poor neighborhood where there were a lot of people that didn't have dental coverage. And the more well-to-do people would often pick on the rednecks that were either missing a tooth or didn't have good health dental care. So there's a lot for me when I have an actual missing tooth right here right now. I'm waiting for the implant, the crown to be put on. So I noticed myself like not wanting to smile a little because I have this story that someone without who's missing a tooth is either it was always implied they were lazy, they didn't know how to take care of themselves, they were less intelligent. Growing up, I was always very afraid of being identified with that. And I also like I'm a bigger person, so a lot of people say, there's a lot of societal pull that bigger people are not as intelligent, they're not as together, they're obviously broken in some way, so why should you listen to them? So it can be very hard to fight that gravitational pull that's going on, and I have a lot of compassion for having been through it myself. In some ways, not that particular issue, but I think that if you can, notice what the beliefs are you attach to it. What do you think other people will think about you? Because we do that, we kind of project onto other people. And I've found that I don't always know. Like the people that I thought would judge me the worst are often the kindest. And some people that I thought would be really cool about, like, oh, you're a bigger person doing stuff, I've had them like send me diets in the mail or like different things like that. I'm like, oh, I feel kind of judged by that. So we don't always know what other people are thinking. We know what we're thinking other people think, and we can do some work on that. And then I go back to the being of service. That's the one thing that helps me is I want to help people. I think there's so much suffering in the world and so many people trapped, and I want to do what I can to help to offer a supportive hand and any insights that might be useful to them. So, and we can do that. We can help each other up so that we are living in a world that's much better. So that's the one thing that often will help me when I'm most scared about what people will think. And then I've also had a lot of luck. Reed Mahako got me to do this, and I think it's brilliant. He's like, tell them what you're afraid of. So I will get up if I'm feeling particularly nervous about my size. I'll get up there and I'll say, I'm noticing I'm feeling really nervous about my size today. I'm worried that you'll judge me. And what I want you to know is I'm here to share what I have, and you can take the whatever is useful for you. And sometimes just naming that, it helps me get over it. Sometimes I still feel some nervous, and sometimes people say, "Yeah, you should. How are you up front and talking to people because you're like you don't have it together?" And I'm like, "We all don't have it together. None of us have it together. We have some things together, and we can share the best of ourselves with other people, and we can also share the things that we think are not the best of us." And sometimes that's the most inspired. The things we don't want to talk about, the things we want to hide, are often the thing that will inspire and touch other people most, that will release shame in other people. And I'm very passionate about that because I think there's a lot of people out there that may not be smiling because they're missing a tooth. Or they might not be, having an experience because they have too many wrinkles or too many fat cells or whatever it is their two is. And I want us all to live these amazing lives. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I really appreciate you sharing that because I think that the physical, our society is so image conscious and we're constantly flooded with, the villains in TV shows have bad teeth often to signify bad teeth is a bad person. And it's a trope. It's something they use that's very easy to convince people they can identify really quickly, when really the truth is there are some really amazing people out there that have bad teeth, and there's some really evil people out there that have crooked or perfect teeth, and there's all the people in between. So I like to be a stand for we can just be who we are where we are, and we can be of service with whatever that is. And I don't know if that helps or not. I know it's a really tough. It's hard to get on camera. I imagine I understand the experience.
A lot of wisdom in the chat. Um, we could explore this for weeks and a lifetime, and that's what makes it a real skill. It's something where we try to bring, because we focus so much on it. And as Kathy said, like, she has a passion for sharing herself and a willingness to be courageous and find ways that are congruent, to take from teachers that make sense to her and not take from things that don't make sense. And someone shared in the chat, I get stuck because there are parts of my identity that are in conflict with each other, and I don't know how to reconcile them. And this is really interesting to me. For example, accuracy and truth is a strong value of mine, and so are compassion and acceptance. So when someone lies or regularly shares comments and statements that aren't true, I get super conflicted as the two parts start fighting each other. Now, to me, the conflict rises. And again, I'm going to speak for myself because those are things I value too. It rises when I'm out of my identity and I'm trying to decide what to do. I don't feel an, an identity conflict, like accuracy and truth, compassion and acceptance. If you lived in an environment where there was nothing that was not that, right? Be like, yeah, I don't feel a conflict, right? And that's where tending to the self, like I so value accuracy and truth. I value something that is clear. Um, I'm sensing manipulation here, and that really is incongruent with what I value. I feel my desire for um, straightforwardness, even at the expense of being able to get everyone over into their way of thinking. Like I like to leave lots of room for people to find their own guidance, their own truth. And so I'm going to practice that by reminding myself first and foremost that that's my core value. So like it's going within. I also compassion and acceptance. Yeah, I feel like I I have lied. I understand that people lie for a variety of different reasons. I can feel some compassion here for myself, and that I value truth, um, acceptance. Like, okay, this is the way the world is. Tap tap tap. I fucking hate the way the world is right now,
I
and
fucking hate the way the world is right now.
and that really is not about my self-image.
And that really is not about my self image.
I'm really wanting to tune more to what matters to me
I'm really wanting to tune more to what matters to me
without action.
without action.
I don't need to always act from it.
I don't always need to act from it.
I want the energy to cultivate what matters to me.
I want the energy to cultivate what matters to me.
And sometimes I'm not clear what action is congruent.
And sometimes I'm not clear what action is congruent.
It's okay. There's a menu, and I don't even have to choose.
It's okay, there's a menu and I don't even have to choose.
So in nonviolent communication, they talk about needs and strategies, and that needs are not in conflict. And I'm borrowing that so that identity, um, and again, like I'm I really do believe that if you look inside and you feel like a failure and you feel like you're someone that is unwilling to change, but you're actually here, and you know, I feel the incongruence with that. I do believe that our traumas can layer us and layer us and layer us. You know, you take gold and you put layer after layer after layer after layer of lead and then bury it in titanium, and you know, and then cover it with a big pile of horse manure. It sometimes can be a challenge to continue to go down to that core identity. And that is honestly where people who you know love you and respect you can reflect. Like somebody who keeps showing up and tapping and engaging is courageous in my eyes. Now, whether they identify themselves in their, um, it could be something different for them. Like it could be like, oh, I'm just so earnest. You know, I'm just so earnest about it. I don't know how you describe the feeling in you. Do you feel courageous, Kathy, or do you feel like it matters to you so much that you're willing to
Yeah, it feels like it
show up?
matters so much. Like I know what it feels like to be stuck myself and I don't want that for someone else.
Yeah,
And I
that
think
being
that
of service and it matters so much.
yeah, and I think that there are conflicts. Like there are times I want to sleep and I also want to be of service and write an email or whatever. And we're often going to have those conflicts. I want to be compassionate and I really value honesty. Okay, that means I don't necessarily have to have as my best friend someone who's a bit habitual liar. And maybe I don't have to judge someone who makes an occasional lie as a write off, so to speak. Or I can understand that some people are lying out of fear, but I don't necessarily have to let them in my inner circle, depending on what
Mm.
my needs are, my individual values and wants. So I think there's a lot of conflict in the world. I love the idea of we'll find our core identity and oh, there'll be no conflict. Everything is clear. And I don't know that that's always true. I think we're often dealing with conflicting. I would like to have something to eat. I want to watch some TV. And I also want to go to bed in time that I'm really alert tomorrow. And I can't do all those things. So maybe I can find some compromises or balance them. And I do think we have some really core driving things of like, I want to be of service is mine, but it also means sometimes I have to take care of myself. And that means not doing something active. It means like doing something internal or not outwardly directed. I don't know if that helps, but or makes sense.
it reminds me that our identity is, to me, layered and has many different facets, like an ecosystem. Um, and for emotional people, we tend to be more biodiverse in our, like, the things that matter to us can, and you said it, like, the action can be like, oh, I have energy for taking care of myself, or actually I do care about my life. I've care about my life not enough not to have exited, to have slogged my way through 1,000 traumas, and here I am, like, oh, I am actually someone who cares about my life enough, and so there are actions that I take that are congruent with that come from my identity in that way.
Yeah.
um, and this is where cultivating that allows us, if you have the energy for blank, like, growth, or the energy for pause, or the energy for peace, or the energy to calm yourself, and the energy, like, I have as my identity and actually a pretty peaceful, present person. um, there was a time when that was not my self image. It was my core identity, but it was not my self image. And so everyone who met me really was bouncing off of this guy that was pretty darn stressed and very, very busy and working 120-hour weeks. Um, and so that's where you can look at, like, where's the interface with the world? Where is there chaos? Because chances are there's something deeper in your your core that matters to you, that is real to you, that when that's your come from energy, your interface to the world changes. And um, doesn't mean that conflict and choice and boundaries and everything else are going to magically take care of themselves, but as a real skill for being calm and confident and present with our lives, that come from energy is is the essential core energy for us to reconnect to.
Yeah. I One thought I had too is a lot of times the most creative expressions are where two things overlap that seem incongruent. So, like when physics and chemistry came together, you got material science, a whole new field came out. I'm in material science, so that may not be relevant to any of you. But if we can be at the intersection of I value truthfulness and I value compassion, if we can just tolerate the discomfort of being in that space where things seem incongruent, and just often there might be some new insight, some new beautiful thing that we can offer the world if we can just be there with it for a little bit and go, huh, that's what I'm noticing right now. What else can I notice? What else can I discover? How else might I hold this? So that being with yes and, we like that black and white, like this is the truth, but that yes and may bring us something that we didn't even know existed.
Mm. Um, the chat's open. If there's something there that you would like us to make sure that we touch on in the next 10 minutes or so. Um, the baby step energy, micro steps, if you don't want to use baby steps, but I've got a baby here, and I watch her, right? Like, she's exploring going down the steps the way everyone who's bigger
None
does,
on her
and
bum.
going up the steps the way that everyone bigger does. And sometimes right now she's using our hands and holding it to kind of give her a little boost. Please know, as a community and as a circle, um, we want to support you in ways that we can in taking steps to have your come from be from a place like, I have the energy for this, and I could use some reflection support. Thrivingnow.center is a great place to ask for that. If you're a circle member, thrivingnow.com/circle, there's a private section that you can join as well. Um, so um, I keep coming back to what someone said. There was a person's name that was mentioned, and a couple of people said, "Oh, I compare myself to them too." And you know, I I just want to reflect that there are people whose come from is to be a challenge. I want to challenge you to be the best that you can be. I want you to be up on the chair. I want you to yell out, now I am the voice. I said I was up on a chair screaming that at a Tony Robbins thing. That's not the person that they mentioned. Um, and they activate the comparison in us to drive us forward. If I can do it, you can do it too. And they use their authority and all the things that they've done in their life and all the things that they have overcome, the hero's journey, and they're saying, you too, you can do that too. And that is incredibly useful in our civilization, to have people who that's their orientation. It's not mine, and it may not be yours. It may be yours, uh, and it may be something that activates something in you. And I'm feeling like I'm bringing it up because these kinds of very powerful, charismatic achievers, uh, they throw me off. They I can get really boosted up in a way that's unsustainable and then crash and feel like that failure energy. So I'm kind of bringing it back around, that if that is your come from energy and you're wanting to model that, or it activates you, honestly, Awaken the Giant Within came along for me at a time in my life where that energy was so necessary. It was uh, grab me out of one frame of reference and plop me into another, but it wasn't where I could flourish. And thriving for me is something different, but it helped me.
Mhm. I
And
think it's like a nutrient. Like I like it as like it's like eating really something really sweet. I love that sometimes. Like it's the high energy Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins. Like there's times when I can have a dose of it, but if I live on that, for my nervous system is not a good main course. I'm more about let's clear the traumas and authentically step forward in the moment rather than kind of power through. And yeah, it's been really good for me to have doses of that at times.
yeah,
So I think it's like, what is a good balance for your system? How do you want to be inspired? And I think that there's a lot of shoulds. I should be inspired by Tony Robbins. I should go to all his classes and do all the things and jump on the chairs. And yet I get exhausted. My adrenaline it's too much for my system to feel really happy as a, it's great as a tenth of my diet, but not as 90 or 100%. And everybody is different.
right. And in emotional freedom work, we can ask, what is this nourishing for me? If I'm comparing, what is it calling forth? Is it calling forth clarity that actually this is contrast for me and I'm this? Is it saying, oh, there's a part of you that's getting a little tingly, and maybe it's like you've been a little like in the in you've been over in excess yin, right? And you need a little yang to get you back into balance. But for a lot of people who are yin deficient, right, which is where I was, you know, I needed more of that kind of meditative peacefulness, pause, and things like that, because I was trying to push into the high achieving energy field, which is not the way my body's oriented. And I hope that if you study any kind of yin yang energy flow, I'm not a big fan of the masculine feminine view because I think we tend to then imagine it's male and female. Um, but the yin yang, the energy of rest and digest, and the energy of expression, it feels very, very kind of um, young, driven to be consistent, like to make today great and blah, blah, blah. And I know some people really are like on the spectrum, that's their sweet spot. There's a guy in my Twitter feed starts every day with something that's got, volcanoes and stuff. And they're like, make today great. Well, actually, I'm gonna cuddle and read a book to my daughter, and that's my definition of great. Thanks for the reminder. And sometimes it gives me a little bit of a boost of like, oh, wake up, today matters. That's what we can do with some of that energy.
And I like the idea of exploring rather than deciding I need, like, sometimes I will want to decide, like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life because it worked once versus just being curious each day, and noticing, okay, I tend to not like this, but let me try it today because I'm noticing it, or just kind of exploring and allowing myself to have it. I don't know. I like that kind of, again, the meditative thing. Like, what is right for me today? Do I need a Tony Robbins call or a Brendan Burchard call? Sometimes they can really perk me up and I get a lot done. And other days I'm like, I'm tired watching you jump around on stage like that.
Uh, Even though I'm connecting to my energy,
Even though I'm connecting to my energy
and other people's energy impacts me.
and other people's energy impacts me.
Sometimes it nourishes me.
Sometimes it nourishes me.
Sometimes it repulses me.
Sometimes it repulses me.
Sometimes it draws me out.
Sometimes it draws me out.
And sometimes I just want to hide.
And sometimes I just want to hide.
There is a core knowing in me, maybe.
There's a core knowing in me.
Is there a core knowing?
Is there a core knowing?
I'd love to feel my core knowing.
I'd love to feel my core knowing.
Knowing who I am,
Knowing who I am.
what matters to me,
What matters to me.
what matters in my bones,
What matters in my bones.
what matters in my heart.
What matters in my heart.
Even if that's a changing thing,
Even if that's a changing thing.
I want that freedom,
I want that freedom.
and I am developing the skill.
And I am developing that skill. I love the fact that we're all here together exploring this because just understanding, just discussing the fact that we can figure out who we are, it gives us permission to look at life a little differently. And I do invite you over the next day or two to just be aware, let yourself notice if the thoughts arise or you get new insights because you did some stretching and some exposure therapy and some sharing of ideas. I want each of us to be able to be as free as we can be and experience life as deeply as we wish to. And when we're trapped in those old ruts and patterns, it's hard. It gets dull and boring. And I don't think any of us need to live a dull or boring life. So if we can kind of shake off things that aren't ours and discover ourselves, we create something really beautiful and we role model that for others. So someone shared, I was so tired before the call and it almost didn't come. Now I feel so much better. Thank you. That's great. And someone else shared, I thought there was something wrong with me that I run from someone like Tony Robbins. No. And someone else said, nope, nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. We all get to have our own expressions and our own things that excite us.
To remind us and myself definitely too. I appreciate those of you that signed up for the call, that started building the energy, that listened, replied, and responded, and that have joined us here tonight, and that will see this on the replay. When we do this together and freshen up our self-image, all of a sudden I've noticed that things that I hadn't really even considered were kind of buried. Um, like I love communicating with animals, but I haven't had a furry friend in my home for a really long time.
I'll get you a cat right now. It can be delivered in an hour.
I know. Thank you. And
I've been
uh,
trying. I've been
and no,
teasing him about giving a
you
cat.
also want to send Dira 16 ponies. So
Yes.
let's we'll keep this under control. Um, so aware that, I took an animal communication class. I love the communication with animals, and I meet them on the trail, but there's an awkwardness sometimes on the trail. Like people don't know whether you like their animal or whether, they are feeling uncertain. So the last couple of days when I've been out, guess what? There have been some furry friends. And I remember yesterday, like I freshened up my love of animals, and um, it was wonderful. And I feel that now, like, oh, and it connects me more. It connects me to those of you that have furry friends. It connects me to that. And what was really cool is that I was walking along and there was this noise, and I looked over and there was a turkey. And I was like, hi. And it kind of looked down. I said, I'm cool. And it was like, oh. And then it went off and continued eating the yummy stuff, whatever
You were
that
in
it
the
was
middle of its
eating.
kitchen. Yeah.
But it was a beautiful, and it was, the sun and it knew it too. Like, oh, I feel your appreciation.
I see the
You like my feathers on the back there, don't you? And they were hitting the sun was hitting it just perfectly. And it was through that energetic communication that I freshened up, that connected me again. Now that used to be important, a part of how I lived. I lived on with horses and two dogs and two cats, and
Oh.
um, so like when we freshen up, all of a sudden now things, all of a sudden, um, there's an opportunity that our come from energy can connect us with nature and life in a way that is will feel more thriving to us. And that's an invitation to dust off something that maybe you used to find important. And
Someone asked if you could define come from energy.
that come from energy is like, the sensation of it is, this matters to me. This is held in, um, if you imagine like the core of an apple, right? That's a center where a lot of important things like seeds are kept. The seed of us is like in the core, the things that can grow into something or be expressed. And there is an energetic, when that rises, that can express itself, come forward. Or even the come from energy can be like, oh, that deepening, but there's a movement to it. And it feels, um, to me, in my physiology, it feels different than like, oh, this is exciting to me. Like, um, that can be more up here, but it was like, oh, yeah, there's more oomph to it, um, more vibrancy, more aliveness to it. Um, Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kathy.
My pleasure.
Um,
Really appreciate all
so,
of you.
mhm. ThrivingNow.center. We welcome you to continue the engagement around this. Love to hear from more people too. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.